Ajit Doval is a person whose life could be the subject of numerous films like Dhurandhar, each of which has the potential to gross over 1,000 euro SARS and euro kroazas. From allegations of political bias to his foray into Pakistan and elimination of terrorists, his life is filled with stories that could inspire many Dhurandhar, sabi ang Dhurandhars. He is the man for whom IB rules were changed. His tenure was reduced, and later, even the rules for becoming NSA were changed. Every step he took is a story of genius. From transforming India's defense attitude to the Ghar mein ghuskar Maragi entering homes and killing people, Ajit Doval not only made decisions, but also transformed the mindset of the entire nation. Surgical strikes, Article 370, the Balakot airstrike, and each incident are in their own right, and today, even Bollywood's highest-grossing films clearly reflect Ajit Doval. From films like Uri to Dhurandhar, Ajit Doval is a person whose true significance may not be understood by everyone today, but one day the whole world will. So if you love your country and are proud of Ajit Doval today, we will share some important stories from his life that will make you feel proud to be an Indian. India's history is very old. Many warriors and great men were born here. But there is one truth that still pains us. Our country has been repeatedly invaded, whether by the Mughals, the British, or other foreign powers. They inflicted such a blow on India that it took centuries to recover. For a long time, our thinking was limited to a defensive approach. But history took a turn when Ajit Doval became NSA in 2014. After that, for the first time, India now attacks from within. Now, we don't just defend, we also retaliate. Even the air on that flight to Kandahar felt heavy. Every face was gripped by fear, and amidst all this, Zahur Mystery roamed the cabin with a weapon in his hand. His voice was growing louder. Hindus are a cowardly community. No one will come to save you. Suddenly, he pulled a passenger from his seat and made him stand. The entire cabin fell silent. No one moved. Everyone's eyes were fixed on that moment. Then, he pulled out a knife and stabbed the passenger. Then, in a few seconds, something happened that shook everyone on the plane to their core. Meanwhile, Ajit Doval, the Indian negotiator, was sitting at the front weighing every word, as his every decision involved hundreds of lives and Vogo Indiam. But the circumstances were such that every option was incomplete and every step was risky. That moment didn't end there. It became a memory. A wound that faded with time but never erased. Baba Sahib is a man who, like an eagle, keeps his eyes on his prey. He can wait for years for the right moment, but as soon as the opportunity arises, he strikes with such precision and speed that the enemy doesn't have a chance to react, and the game is over. We'll see how Ajit Doval avenged at Kandahar at the end of this video. But before that, let's take a look at some of Ajit Doval's courageous and remarkable actions that will make you even more proud of him. It was the 1970s, when the fire of insurgency was rapidly spreading in the hills of Mizoram, located in northeastern India, and the Mizo National Front led by Lal Denga was demanding a separate nation, and an atmosphere of violence, fear, and instability had developed, posing a direct challenge to India's unity. The situation had become so serious that the government needed someone who could quell this insurgency with a mind, not a gun. At that time, the Intelligence Bureau decided to send one of its most dynamic and risk-taking officers, Ajit Doval, to Mizoram. He was newly married. However, he disguised his identity and entered Mizoram with his wife, Aruni Mai. Once there, he adopted a strategy of understanding the roots of the insurgency, not direct warfare. It was there that he discovered that Lal Denga's true strength lay in his 7 commanders, and that if they were broken, the entire movement would collapse. From there, a plan was hatched that was no less than a spy thriller. He invited these same 7 commanders to his home for dinner, telling his wife that some guests were arriving and that miso should be prepared for them, langa for them. But when the door opened, there were dangerous, heavily armed terrorists inside, and a guard was posted outside. Nevertheless, Doval remained calm, and during negotiations created such an atmosphere that 6 of the 7 commanders sided with the Indian government, forcing Lal Denga to ultimately compromise. Which asa pasas? This brought peace to Mizoram and ended a major insurgency, Hika. This was not just a mission. It demonstrated that wars are won not only with weapons, but with intelligence, patience, and timely decisions. But the story did not end there, as the real game was yet to come, and the next chapter began in Pakistan, India's greatest enemy, where every step posed a threat of death, and every mistake could cost lives. In the 1970s, when Pakistan was secretly pursuing its nuclear program, India desperately needed to uncover its truth. For this mission, the same name was chosen, Ajit Doval, who completely transformed his identity. He learned Islamic traditions, adopted a language and accent, and disguised himself as a beggar to Kahuta, Pakistan, where the nuclear program was underway at the Khan Research Center. For months, he sat outside the center begging. But in reality, he was gathering information from everyone, from guards to employees, befriending them and piecing together vast secrets from their conversations. area. When he became convinced that Pakistan was developing nuclear weapons, he needed proof. To achieve this, he adopted a unique strategy. He collected scientists' hair and sent it to India. Testing revealed evidence of radiation, confirming Pakistan's rapid progress towards developing a nuclear bomb. Furthermore, he even attempted to obtain blueprints from a scientist by blackmailing him. However, due to political circumstances, that plan failed to materialize. Nevertheless, Doval remained in Pakistan for 7 years, continuously providing India with vital information. He came close to capture several times, but through his ingenuity, he escaped. Once his fake beard fell off in a crowd and his identity was suspected, But each time he composed himself, unfazed, and continued his mission, a testament to his mental strength and training. Even after returning to India, his work didn't end. Instead, it became even more challenging. The Khalistan movement was at its peak in Punjab, where he infiltrated the enemy and understood their entire strategy, which he later used in Operation Black Thunder, which broke the back of terrorism, base fighters on terrorism. Subsequently, in Kashmir, he brought a prominent terrorist to his side, not only weakening terrorism, but also strengthening the democratic process. Another example of his negotiating skills. The situation in the Kashmir valleys was uneasy at that time, with curfews frequently imposed on the streets and gunfire echoing at nightfall. Stone pelting had become commonplace, and in many areas, people were confined to their homes and living in fear. Every day was uncertain about who would be the next target. In this environment, Burhan Wani had become a figure who, through both gun and social media, was gaining a foothold in the minds of the youth. He was convincing them that this path was the right one, and gradually spreading a mindset in the valley that was making the situation even more dangerous. This was not just a security issue, but a period where fear, anger, and disorientation were creating a new problem, and if it was not stopped in time, the situation could have worsened. During this time, under the leadership of Ajit Doval, his every move was monitored. His whereabouts and movements were understood, and the right moment was awaited without haste, because in such an operation, one wrong move could endanger many lives. Then, based on precise input, sudden action was taken. A swift and decisive operation was carried out, and within a short time, the name that had become a symbol in the valley was eliminated. This sent a clear message that India no longer waited for the threat to escalate. In 2014, Iraq was ablaze. Mosul fell. Tikrit fell. ISIS's black flags fluttered in every city. The Iraqi army was fleeing, abandoning their weapons and stripping off their uniforms. America was silent. Europe was silent. The whole world simply watched. And in the midst of this hell, 46 Indian nurses were trapped in a hospital in Tikrit. ISIS fighters were patrolling outside. Explosions echoed through the hospital windows. Family members were screaming on the phone. The news was simply counting the bodies, and those 46 women sat in a room, unsure if they would see the next sun rise. At that very moment, thousands of kilometers away in Delhi, a man answered the phone. Ajit Doval had just become the NSA, but he was only new to the position. The game was old. This was the same man who had spent 7 years in disguise in Pakistan, right under the nose of the ISI. The same man who had gone alone among the insurgents in Mizoram. He returned alive, without a gun or an armored vehicle. The same man who had first urged the Kandahar hijacking to not bow down to terrorists. No one listened that day. Today, he was sitting in the decision-making chair. Doval acted first. He awakened his decades-old intelligence network. He simultaneously activated all of India's eyes and ears on the ground in the Middle East. Who belonged to which group? Which path was open? Whose words were listened to where? All this information was gathered piece by piece. Through back channels without any public statement, India sent a direct message to ISIS. Brief but venomous. If these nurses were even scratched, the consequences would reach beyond Iraq's borders. It wasn't an empty threat. Doval mobilized real pressure behind that message. Pressure that lacked intent. ISIS was toppling governments and destroying armies. But Doval did what America and Europe couldn't. He exerted such a stranglehold of pressure and intelligence that even the world's most feared terrorist organization had to pause and think. The situation on the ground was changing every hour. A safe route in the morning would become a battlefield in the afternoon. Yesterday's contact person would disappear today. Doval was adapting his strategy with every change, swiftly and with a cool mind. Then the route opened. One by one, all 46 nurses were evacuated. No bullets were fired, no bombs were dropped. Quietly and neatly, as if a mastermind was making his final move. The nurses returned to India. Families were crying at the airport. TV cameras captured faces of relief, but no one asked how many sleepless nights were spent behind the scenes. How many times the plan failed, how many times it seemed that everything was over. The change in India's counter-terror strategy after 2014 was not limited to mere statements. Rather, under the leadership of Ajit Doval, it was executed on the ground, and for the first time, it was clearly visible that India had moved from a reactive approach to a proactive, precision-based response. The 2016 surgical strikes involved real-time surveillance of cross-border launch pads. By merging humiliation inputs with technical intercepts, exact target coordinates were identified and a limited window operation was executed in which special forces crossed the LOC, neutralized multiple targets, and completed the extraction without a protracted engagement, a feat rarely seen in earlier policy frameworks. This was not a single strike, but a model of calibrated retaliation with escalation control, where the message was clear, but the conflict did not escalate into a full-scale war. Further, refining this framework, an advanced structure for covert operations was developed as seen in Operation Sindoor. In 2025, precision-based neutralization was achieved by identifying high-value targets without direct visibility, focusing on multi-agency coordination, layered intelligence fusion, and mini footprint execution. The objective of this operation was not merely target elimination, but the creation of sustained strategic pressure where the action would be minimal, but the impact would be persistent. Most importantly, this approach was completely different from India's traditional defensive posture. Previously, such cross-border precision operations were either limited or not publicly acknowledged. But now, they had become a defined doctrine. And it was this change that made it clear that these were not just operations. They were the execution of Ajit Doval's strategic vision, transforming India from a nation of waiting to strike. On a crowded Karachi street, the shops were open at noon. Inside a small shop, amidst the crowd, stood Zahur Mystery, a name associated years ago with the Kandahar hijacking. But now, from the outside, he looked like an ordinary shopkeeper. Everything was going on as usual. Suddenly, a motorcycle slowed down on the road. Two men, their faces covered, got off. He walked straight towards the shop, without hesitation. A few seconds. It was just a matter of seconds. As soon as he stepped inside, he opened fire without any hesitation. No warning, no conversation, just precise and continuous firing. And before the bystanders could understand, it was over. Buffer. Zahur Mystery had fallen to the ground. The same man who had once spread fear inside an aircraft had now become the victim of the same sudden attack. The attackers exited as quickly as they had entered. The bike started and disappeared among the crowd within seconds. The one who had once spread fear met his end just as suddenly and mercilessly. Ajit Doval has many such courageous and decisive actions that have provided security to our country many times. If you would like to see more such videos on Ajit Doval, please let us in the comments. Jai Hind.